All right, so we are back making our windmill block for Westport. So on this, you had your 45-degree triangles and you put them together. You've got the lighter color with one of your green colors or whatever color it is with fabric 7, and then again with fabric 9. So you can see that one corner, one edge of this is not the smart corner on each side. It's a bummer that it doesn't match up. With these being the batiks, I could have matched them up. Back and front don't really matter. With cottons, obviously that's going to be a bigger deal. But you're going to open these up. And I ironed towards the dark. There's no ironing instructions in these, but I did iron towards the dark just so that you don't get that as much of that shadowing in your piecing. So you can see, like on this one, I don't have this shadowing here. If I were to have put it that way, then I'm going to get a little bit of shadowing from that seam. So I'm just trying to avoid that. So for all of these, there were a lot of little triangles, let me tell you. So just ironing those open. These should measure 2-inch square when you have them done. This method was fine, like it works. I always prefer to do it with the square and then make them a little bit larger and trim them up, because anytime that I have triangles that I'm putting together, especially when I'm sewing on this, you're sewing on the bias. And so you're gonna get a little bit of stretch as you do that, and it just makes them a little bit wonky. Whereas if you have a square and you're stitching along that diagonal line and then cutting, and if it gets a little wonky, you're trimming it up so that it does become nice and square. And maybe I just need to become a better stitcher. But I think it's just the nature of fabric in general. It moves, it stretches. And so find those ways that work better for you. This way does use slightly less fabric because I'm cutting a 2-inch strip versus a 2.5-inch strip. So I do save a little bit. Not sure it's really worth that. But that's what the instructions had us do. So that's what we did. Again, if you want to cut 2.5-inch, squares, then you would be able to do your square and cut it in half and then have some to trim down. So you're welcome to do that. You could also probably even get away with 2 3/8, but I would go 2.5 just so that I have a little bit more to be able to trim off of those. Okay, so then I am going to, what I always do, because I struggle with when it comes to windmills. I don't know why. I just do. So I lay out my pieces individually in the block that I want to do. So, I lay everything out so that it is exactly how I want it to be, because I can't ever seem to lay it out correctly without looking at a picture. So then you're going to piece your squares once they're trimmed up and good, to make your 4 corners. We're making 2 different of the windmill pieces. So I need 3 of these total, but for each block, I need one that is fabric 9 and fabric 1, so a dark and a light. And then I'm going to have one that is 3 of the lighter darks and 1 darker dark, okay? So that it makes that windmill effect in the center. So it's really important that you have the placement of this darker one correct when you're putting it all together. Again, when you iron these, make sure I ironed towards the longer side of the dark piece so that, again, I didn't get that shadowing here. And then when I go to put them together, I have seams that are going to nest really nice for me. just like that. I don't know if you can see that, but those seams are going to nest really nice when I go opposite directions like that. And if you have a direction with these, because really if I place this like this, they're the same. So I'm wanting them all to go the same direction. Okay, so that when I flip this one over, it's going to nest really nice with that other one. So you can see I have really nice nested seams right here. Okay, that's what we want. Now, a lot of people would probably tell you that, oh, we want to iron these open so that we don't get this bulk. We want to alleviate that bulk. Okay, well, I'm going to show you how we do that without ironing open, because again, you can iron open, but your piecing isn't going to be as strong when you have ironed something open. I know a lot of people swear by it. I really don't like it because as a quilter, I see a lot of pressed open seams that are popping apart. And if I stitch in the ditch on those seams, it can pop those seams as well. So if they're ironed like this, it's going to help your long armor. Okay, so I'm going to spin this seam here. So what I'm going to do is, you can see that I have the seam going this way and the seam going this way on these pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this one seam and I'm going to continue that circle. And so I'm going to pop it over, folding this one away from me and this one towards me. And what that does is that's going to open up that center seam. I popped just a couple of stitches doing that, and that's okay. Okay, I still have a nice solid seam everywhere. I just popped a couple of those stitches, and then I kind of get that windmill effect here too, but that allows that piece to lay really nice and flat when I have it all ironed out. Okay, I know you can't feel it, but it is nice and flat, and I'm not going to have a really bulky seam in any one spot, because even if I had opened this up, now I have this on top. So I've just created this round piece here, and so it's not going to be big and bulky when you put it in your long arm and have that quilt finished. And then it's not going to have this big bulky seam even when you're using that quilt. So that's nice. Okay, so that's our windmills. And I'm going to do, even with the solid grains, I'm going to do the same thing. So you can see, I actually ironed these the other direction. I don't know why. And this is what I'm talking about with the shadowing. So you can, it's just a little bit darker right here. And that's that shadowing that you get. If I had not done it, if I had done it the correct way, the way I should have, they would have gone that way. Not a big deal. You're not really going to notice it that much, but with these really light fabrics, you do get a little bit of that shadowing. So again, this one, because these seams are going this way, I'm going to pop it, pop those couple of stitches, and then open that up, and that's going to sit nice and flat for me. All right, the other block that is in the bigger block is just these squares with a little bit of a triangle edge on them. So I took and marked a line diagonal to diagonal on the smaller square so that I had that nice line. You might have a mat or something on your sewing machine that you don't have to mark those. I've had those before, but they kind of, I take them on and off and it's not really worth it. I'll just mark them. But if you have one of those on there that helps you line things up so that you don't have to have that mark, great, it saves you a little bit of time. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and iron this open once I have it stitched. Make sure that you stitch just a thread width to the inside of your, maybe that's the outside, I don't know, to the side that you're going to cut off, because that's going to allow room for your fold. If I don't do that, then that fold is going to take away part of my square essentially, and I don't want that. So I want just a thread width. That's where that scant 1/4 inch, same thing with these. Okay, so you can see that folded over nicely. And so that'll get ironed out. So this one's laying nice and flat. You can see I ironed it out before I cut this off, okay? And what that allows me to do is I'm gonna grab my add quarter right here, and it sits right up into that ridge that we just created when we ironed it. And then I get a nice 1/4 inch seam there. And then I'm gonna fold that back over. And then it still should be my 3.5 inches that I started with. Then I'm just laying it out. And I have one done, but you're gonna end up with your 3 blocks here. This one's gonna go in the middle so that we create this line here. It's looking a little funky because I don't have everything in there just yet, obviously. No, that doesn't go there. This goes here. There we go, like this. Okay, and then I'll have another one of these opposite that down here. All right, so then you're gonna put that together just like a 9 patch. So that's what I have here. Okay, you can see that all my points line up pretty good. They're not 100% perfect, but they're pretty good, okay? I don't worry about getting perfect. Nobody's perfect. As my grandma used to say, only God is perfect. It's okay to have a few little mistakes, okay? Things that I want to pay attention to is that I'm not cutting off points too bad, so that I make my triangles actually triangles and not trapezoids or any other weird figure. If I get a little bit, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And then once I have this 9 patch, then I'm just adding my little borders there. They do like to stretch a little bit, so just be aware of that because they are so small. So when you iron, just be careful not to really push and pull those out of square for yourself. It'll go together better later. You can always square things up as you go. If you want to have that block go together, just make sure that you're not cutting off too much so that it doesn't end up too small, and making sure that you are doing that scant 1/4 inch is going to help you out a lot. One thing I forgot to mention, when you put these guys together and you're putting together your 9 patch, I ironed towards this square so that again, every time I am going to have that nesting seam, because if I go towards this one and this one, then I'm always going to get that nesting seam, and it doesn't matter where that's going to be. And then it'll really fit in nicely. And then you can make sure that'll also help you line up those points so that you get those nice crisp points and we don't have anything floating out there. So I hope this helps you on Westport block number 2. Happy quilting, and I will see you again soon for block number 3.